My name is James Bernett. I was 46 when I learned that betrayal does not arrive like thunder. It arrives in a clean suit, with your family name on the cuff, and it asks whether you want more wine. I built my life around control because I had seen what the lack of it does to men. My father drank through 2 companies and 1 marriage. He died in a townhouse in Hampstead with 3 watches on the bedside table, and no one willing to identify the body except me. I was 27 then. My younger brother Adrian was 22. Our mother had already been dead for 6 years. I paid for the funeral. Adrian cried over the coffin. I remember watching his shoulders shake and thinking grief looked almost graceful on him. He had always been better at being seen. By then, I had already started Bernett Strategic, a modest risk advisory firm that grew into something larger because I was patient and because I was never sentimental about money. I did not chase markets. I waited for weaknesses. I read balance sheets the way surgeons read scans. By 35, I had offices in London and Zurich, a narrow circle of clients who paid very well for discretion, and a reputation for solving expensive problems before they became public ones. At 37, I married Helena Voss. She was not beautiful in the obvious way. She was precise, tall, dark hair, light eyes that never warmed unless she wanted something. We met at a fund dinner in Geneva. She spoke to me about sovereign debt as if she were discussing weather. I liked that. I liked that she did not perform softness. She had worked in compliance, then private wealth. She understood structures, trusts, shadows. We married 11 months later in a civil ceremony attended by 12 people and 1 photographer neither of us ever liked. I loved her in the way controlled men do. Quietly, completely. I bought a house in Belgravia because she liked the proportions. I learned she preferred silence in the mornings and classical piano after midnight. I stopped scheduling dinners on Thursdays because that was the night she called her mother in Vienna. I let her redesign my study, though I hated what she did to it. I gave her access to everything that mattered except my fear. The fear was simple. I had spent so long building a life that could not be taken from me that I forgot theft often comes from inside the walls. Adrian came into the company because blood is a lazy argument, and I let myself make it. He had charm, which I lacked, and instincts with clients, which I did not trust but could use. He knew how to touch a room without leaving fingerprints. Women liked him. Men underestimated him. I made him head of business development with compensation generous enough to keep him loyal and oversight strict enough to keep him useful. For a while, it worked. Helena and Adrian got along too well from the beginning, though I dismissed it because civilized people getting along is not evidence of a crime. They fenced with each other over dinner. They shared references I did not always catch. He called her Hell. She let him. I disliked it once, lightly. She looked at me over her glass and said, "You don't own syllables, James." Adrian laughed. I did not. We had a daughter 2 years after the wedding. Clara. She had Helena's eyes and my habit of watching before speaking. When she was born, I understood for the first time that love is not warmth. It is exposure. Someone can hurt you simply by existing in the world. I did not become softer after Clara. I became more exact. I reviewed every insurance policy, changed trustees, bought a second property under a separate vehicle. Helena called it obsessive. I called it fatherhood. The first fracture appeared in a room full of glass. We were in Zurich, in the conference floor of our office overlooking the lake. February light, hard and pale. Adrian was presenting a prospective acquisition strategy to a family office from Luxembourg. Halfway through, I noticed Helena messaging him from the far side of the table. Not once, repeatedly. He would glance at his phone, adjust a point, then continue. It was subtle. Too subtle for most people. Not for me. After the meeting, I asked Helena why she was feeding my brother lines during a live presentation. She did not look up from her tablet. Because he was drifting. He was drifting because you were distracting him. He was drifting because you prepared him badly. There are marriages in which arguments are storms. Ours were colder. We did not shout. We stripped flesh with syntax. I prepared him with facts, I said. He needed a story. This is not theater. No, she said, finally looking at me. It's survival. I remember that word because it did not belong in the conversation, and because later I understood it had not been about the meeting at all. That spring, small things started moving out of alignment. Helena became careful with her phone in a way she had never been before. Adrian began disagreeing with me in front of staff, not openly enough to force confrontation, just enough to test the edges of authority. A long-standing client in Monaco asked why my brother had implied the firm was entering a transitional leadership phase. I asked Adrian what the hell that meant. He smiled and said the client had misunderstood ambition for instability. I should have cut him out then. Instead, I chose blood again. Blood and history, and the exhausted fantasy that family, if given enough chances, will eventually become family. In June, Helena told me she wanted space. We were in the kitchen. Clara was asleep upstairs, rain against the windows. She said it like a logistical preference, not a declaration. I think it would be healthier if we lived separately for a while. For you, I said. For all of us. There is no all of us in that sentence. There is you, there is me. Clara is what you place in the middle to make yourself feel clean. Her mouth tightened. You make everything sound ugly. No, I make it sound exact. She moved into the Eaton Square flat 3 days later. Not a dramatic departure. No broken glasses, no scenes. 2 assistants, a car, 6 cases, Clara's clothes divided with the efficiency of a military withdrawal. We agreed on temporary shared custody. We did not tell Clara the truth because children do not need truth. They need stability with the shape of truth around it. The affair revealed itself by accident, which offended me. I had not hired anyone. I had not gone through devices. I had not needed to. Clara left her scarf in Helena's flat. I went up to return it on a Thursday evening. Helena was not there. The housekeeper let me in. I placed the scarf on the console and heard a man laughing in the study. Adrian's laugh. Low, pleased, intimate in its confidence. I stood in the hallway and listened. Then Helena said, "He's beginning to suspect the board issue." Adrian replied, "Let him. By the time he knows, it won't matter." There's a moment when the body understands before the mind allows it. Mine did. My hands went cold. My breathing slowed. I did not enter the room immediately. I listened because pain had become information. Helena said, "The proxies are solid?" "Yes." "And Marcus?" "Paid." "And Evelyn?" "She thinks she's choosing the future." Then Helena laughed. A sound I had once believed belonged only to private hours. I walked into the study. They turned in perfect symmetry. Adrian, sitting on the edge of the desk, no jacket, sleeves rolled. Helena in the chair beside the window, one leg crossed over the other, my daughter's drawing pinned on the board behind her. No one spoke for 2 seconds. Then Adrian stood up and said, "James." It was the tone people use at hospitals when someone has not yet been told. I looked at Helena first. "How long?" She did not insult me with denial. "8 months," I nodded. "And the board?" Adrian answered. "You're overextended. The firm needs different leadership." "Leadership," I said. "That is an elegant name for theft." He took a step forward. "You built this. Fine. No one denies it. But you're not the only one who made it grow. You have never built anything in your life except appetite." His face hardened then. The boy under the charm. The hungry one. Helena stood. "Stop this." I looked at her. "Did you sleep with him before or after you decided to help him steal my company?" Her expression changed only around the eyes. "You don't get to reduce everything to ownership. You reduced marriage to strategy. You reduced marriage to architecture. Everything had a place. Everything except a pulse." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because betrayal nearly always rewrites history in language flattering to itself. I left without another word. Not from dignity, from discipline. There is a difference. That night I sat alone in my study in Belgravia and poured a drink I did not touch. London was quiet below the windows. Clara was with Helena. The house was too well arranged. Pain moves badly through beautiful rooms. It has nowhere honest to sit. At 1:13 in the morning, I called Daniel Kay. Daniel had been my lawyer for 12 years. He was one of the few men I trusted because he had no need to be liked. He answered on the second ring. "Who died?" "Not yet," I said. He was at my house 27 minutes later. I told him everything once. No repetition, no theatrics. When I finished, he said, "Do you want revenge or protection?" "Is there a difference?" "Yes. Revenge makes noise. Protection survives." I thought about Clara asleep in the flat where my wife and brother had been planning my removal. "Protection," I said. He nodded. "Then, for the next few weeks you will do exactly what I say, even when it offends your instincts." Daniel brought in a forensic team through privilege before dawn. Quiet people, expensive people. We reviewed board communications, proxy assignments, discretionary structures, side letters, compensation amendments. By noon, the shape of it was visible. Adrian had been courting 2 minority shareholders and 1 non-executive director. Helena had used her access to my private holding arrangements to suggest I was preparing to move assets beyond the firm's control. She had not forged documents. She had done something cleaner. She had curated interpretation. There was more. 3 client migration drafts had been prepared from Adrian's private email account to a new entity incorporated in Luxembourg 6 months earlier. Avern Advisory S.A. Beneficial ownership obscured through layers thin enough to appear serious and weak enough to peel. Daniel peeled them by the second day. Helena was named through a Liechtenstein structure. Adrian through a Cypriot nominee. Marcus Bell, my finance director, had approved 2 suspicious consultancy payments to an intermediary connected to Evelyn Rhodes. The board member Adrian claimed had chosen the future. They were not planning leverage. They were planning succession with my capital, my clients, and my surname stripped off and repurposed. "Can we stop it?" Daniel asked. "No," I said. "We can let it begin." He looked at me for a long moment, and then smiled in the way certain men do when they discover they are not the coldest person in the room after all. For the next 19 days, I performed ignorance. I attended meetings. I let Adrian pitch vision. I let Helena communicate through lawyers about custody scheduling and practicalities. I signed off on ordinary items and delayed extraordinary ones. I spoke less than usual, which no one noticed because restraint had always been mistaken for emotional limitation in me. It is useful to be underestimated by those who mistake noise for force. At the same time, Daniel and I moved everything that was still legally mine into positions that could not be touched by a hostile board action. The operating company mattered less than the structures above and around it. We tightened trust terms, activated dormant clauses tied to reputational conduct and fiduciary conflict. We notified 2 anchor clients quietly that any transfer solicitation conducted without my written notice would trigger automatic review of all mandates. We also uncovered the one thing I had not expected. Helena had tried to position Clara's educational trust as contingent collateral in a private borrowing arrangement linked to the new venture. The moment Daniel showed me the paper, the room changed. Until then, this had still been business contaminated by sex and blood. Ugly, but legible. Clara altered the scale. That document was unsigned. Exploratory, Daniel said. Preliminary language. It did not matter. She had imagined my daughter as usable. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the dark and remembered Helena in the hospital, hours after Clara was born, exhausted and pale, holding our child to her chest and whispering, "No one gets to teach her fear." I had believed her. Memory is brutal that way. It preserves the exact lines you will later bleed on. On the 21st day, Adrian requested an extraordinary board session. He chose Friday, 8:30 a.m., London office, glass conference room. The same room where I had first noticed Helena feeding him lines. Symbolism is irresistible to mediocre strategists. When I entered, everyone was already seated. Adrian at the far end. Helena present as advisor, despite having no formal board role. Marcus pale but composed. Evelyn careful. 2 outside directors pretending neutrality. Daniel beside me. I had asked him not to speak unless necessary. Adrian opened with concern. Concern about concentration risk. Concern about founder rigidity. Concern about market transition and client diversification. Then he moved toward a motion for interim executive restructuring, pending a vote on permanent leadership review. It was well prepared, not brilliant, just tidy enough to look inevitable. When he finished, he folded his hands and said, "James, no one is questioning your legacy. This is about stewardship." I looked around the table slowly. "Before we discuss stewardship," I said, "we should discuss theft." Silence settled with immediate weight. Marcus looked at Adrian. Helena did not move. Daniel slid folders across the table, 1 to each director. Heavy cream paper. Indexed tabs. The kind of order that kills improvisation. I watched them open the files. First came the Luxembourg incorporation records, then the beneficial ownership charts, then the consultancy payments, then the transfer drafts, then internal messages, then the document regarding Clara's trust. Evelyn stopped turning pages halfway through and sat very still. Marcus went gray. Adrian tried first. "This is misleading." Daniel spoke then. "It is not." Helena kept reading. I admired that for 1 second. The discipline to keep your face composed while your future comes apart in sections. I said, "You wanted a transitional leadership phase. Here it is." Adrian leaned forward. "You think a pile of interpretation proves?" It proves you solicited clients while employed as an officer of this firm for the benefit of an undisclosed competing entity. It proves you coordinated with internal personnel to redirect value. It proves my wife, I glanced at Helena, used privileged personal information to assist that effort. It proves at minimum conspiracy, breach of fiduciary duty, inducement, and enough reputational poison to make every serious client in Europe recoil. Marcus whispered, "Adrian told me you were retiring." I turned to him. "Did you often find retirement documents hidden inside false consultancy payments?" He lowered his eyes. Helena finally spoke. "What do you want, James?" That was the first honest question anyone had asked. I answered her honestly. Custody, containment, memory. Adrian let out a short laugh. "You can't own memory." "No, but I can shape the version the world keeps." Daniel placed one final document on the table. "Resignation terms," he said. Adrian stared at him. "You think we're signing anything?" Daniel said, "No." "I think if you do not, we file by noon in London, Zurich, and Luxembourg, notify all impacted clients, and seek emergency injunctive relief before your lunch reservation has time to cool." One of the outside directors cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should take a moment." "There is no moment," I said. "There is only sequence." I rose and walked to the window. The city below was beginning its ordinary day. Black cars, umbrellas, delivery vans, people hurrying toward minor disasters they thought mattered. Behind me, papers shifted, breaths shortened, chairs creaked under changing loyalties. I turned back. Adrian resigns today. Marcus resigns today. Evelyn remains if the board wishes, after full cooperation. Helena receives nothing from this company, directly or indirectly, and confirms by affidavit that she held no operational role in any client solicitation effort. In exchange, I do not pursue every avenue available. Not because I cannot. Because my daughter deserves fewer headlines than her mother has earned. Adrian stood. "You sanctimonious bastard." "No," I said, "just older." He looked at Helena then, perhaps expecting support, perhaps love. She gave him neither. That interested me more than it should have. Even then, at the edge of collapse, Betrayal had hierarchy. She had chosen survival again. The meeting ended 2 hours later. Adrian did not sign immediately. Daniel made a call. 10 minutes after that, an injunction draft was circulating on screens he could see. He signed. Marcus signed next. Evelyn requested counsel and stayed. Helena asked to speak to me alone. We met in my office, the study she had once redesigned in colder lines than I preferred. She stood by the shelf where Clara kept a framed shell from Brighton. "You always did like corners," she said. "I like limits." She gave a tired half-smile. "No, you like knowing where pain can enter." I remained standing behind the desk. "What do you want to say?" She looked at me for several seconds. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, I saw uncertainty in her without calculation wrapped around it. "I did love you," she said. I thought about answering kindly. It would have cost me less than truth. "You loved being safe with me," I said. "Then you loved being seen by him. Those are not the same thing." She did not deny it. "Did you ever mean to take Clara?" The question landed harder than any confession that had preceded it. "No," she said. "Not from you. Around you, maybe. Away from the way you make life feel measured." Measured. Another word people use when they benefit from your steadiness until they become bored by the fact it was never built for entertainment. I said, You touched her trust. Her eyes closed briefly. I never signed it. You considered it. Yes. The room went quiet. I had imagined this conversation many times in the nights between discovery and exposure. In some versions, I was crueler. In others, weaker. The truth was simpler. By then she had already become historical to me. Not absent. Worse, finished. You should go, I said. She looked at me then with something like grief, though perhaps it was only recognition that access was over. At the door, she stopped. Did you ever really need me, James? I answered without thinking. Once. After she left, I sat down and felt nothing for nearly a minute. Then my hands began to shake. Not from loss, from the delayed cost of self-control. People imagine restraint is clean. It isn't. It just moves the damage inward. The legal separation became public in fragments. No scandal piece could state the whole truth because Daniel had built too many walls around the record. Trade circles heard of governance disputes. A few journalists heard whispers of a family rupture inside a private advisory firm. Adrian's new venture died before launch. Funding evaporated. A man he owed money to in Geneva sued him for unrelated reasons. Charm withers very quickly when deprived of expensive rooms. Helena tried to negotiate image first, then settlement, then tone. When none of that changed the outcome, she became efficient. We divorced over 11 months, no theater. I sought primary custody and got it, not because I painted her as monstrous, but because I painted myself as stable and let her own judgment do the rest. Courts do not need melodrama. They need pattern. Clara was 9 when the separation settled into the shape children can survive. She asked once, while we were driving back from school, "Did Mama leave because of me?" I pulled the car over before answering because some lies damage more than truth, and some truths need gentler architecture. "No," I said. "Adults leave because of what is broken in themselves or between each other. Never because of a child." She nodded, staring ahead. Then she asked, "Will you leave too?" "No." That was the only promise I made. Adrian called me 6 months after the board meeting. I almost did not answer. Then I did, because contempt without curiosity is wasteful. He sounded older, not deeper, just more worn. Men like him do not gain gravity. They lose gloss. "I need to see you." "No." "It's about Helena." I said nothing. "She left 3 months ago." Still, I said nothing. She took what was left. There was a pause in which he may have been waiting for sympathy. He had spent his life confusing shared history with automatic mercy. "What do you want, Adrian?" "I want to know if you planned all of it from the start." There it was. Not remorse, not apology. The need to believe someone else had been playing the same game at the same depth. "No," I said. "I planned from the moment I understood you had." He exhaled. "You could have destroyed me." I was not interested in destruction. I was interested in proportion. He laughed then, bitterly. "You always speak like a judge." "No. Judges speak after the damage." I spoke before it spread. He tried again. We were brothers. We were opportunities standing next to each other in a family photograph. I mistook that for blood. I ended the call. He never contacted me again. Years passed in disciplined increments. Clara grew. The house changed around her. A tutor, then schools, then friends who left shoes in the hallway and laughter in rooms that once had only silence. I reduced my role in the firm and eventually sold a majority stake under terms I could respect. Daniel retired to Sussex and pretended to enjoy gardening. Helena moved between Vienna and Milan, then disappeared into the kind of private life formerly rich women build when public credibility becomes expensive. I heard she remarried. I heard it ended. I heard many things. None of them mattered. The only thing that lasted was consequence. People like neat endings when they hear stories of betrayal, exposure, ruin, balance restored. That is fiction written by people who have never had to continue living after justice. The truth is duller and more intimate. You still wake at 3:12 some nights with a sentence in your head you never got to say. You still remember a hand on your neck, a laugh from another room, a document on a table. You still discover that some forms of humiliation do not fade. They sediment. I am 58 now. Clara is in New York building a life I do not try to manage, only protect when asked. She tells me I am less severe than I used to be. That is not true. I am simply more economical with it. 2 winters ago she asked me over dinner, "Did you ever forgive them?" I cut my fish, set down the knife, and thought about the word. Forgiveness is often just vanity in softer clothing. People want credit for rising above what still shapes them. "No," I said, but I stopped allowing them to continue. She studied me for a moment. "Is that enough?" "It has to be." That answer still holds. I do not tell this story because I need pity. I tell it because betrayal is often discussed by people who were never forced to choose between rage and precision. Rage is easy. Precision costs more. It requires that you remain lucid while your private life is being eaten alive. It requires that you delay satisfaction until it becomes almost indistinguishable from character. If there is anything worth preserving from what happened, it is this. The most dangerous moment in a betrayal is not when you discover it. It is when your pain offers you the chance to become theatrical. That is where most men lose. They reach for noise. They want witnesses. They mistake explosion for power. I chose sequence. I chose documents over shouting, custody over scandal, endurance over spectacle. I do not know whether that makes me better than the people who betrayed me. Better is a child's category. It makes me intact. That was enough. Sometimes, in the late evening, I sit in the study Helena redesigned and never changed back. The lines are still too cold, the shelves too exact. Her touch remains in the room like a legal residue. Outside, Belgravia settles into its expensive quiet. The staff are gone. The phone does not ring. There is no board to defeat, no brother to watch, no wife to misread, only the afterlife of choices. On the wall across from me hangs a photograph Clara took when she was 16, black and white. The lake in Zurich under winter light. Hard surface, no softness. She said she liked it because it looked calm and dangerous at the same time. I understood the instinct immediately. People think survival is noisy because they confuse it with struggle. Real survival is colder. It is a ledger balanced in private. A door closed without shaking. A signature withheld. A child kept outside the radius of adult hunger. A memory allowed to scar without being allowed to rule. My name is James Bernett. My wife betrayed me with my brother. My brother tried to steal the company I built from the wreckage our father left behind. They both failed. Not because I was more ruthless, because I was more patient. That is the part no one teaches you. Revenge is crude in the hands of men who need to be seen. The deeper thing, the harder thing, is to let the betrayers step fully into the shape of what they are. Then close every exit except consequence. I did that. It cost me a marriage, a brother, a portion of whatever innocence success still leaves in a man. It also saved my daughter from becoming collateral in someone else's appetite. When I place the losses beside each other now, the scale does not trouble me. I would make the same choices again, only faster.